Welcome to Stormwater Drainage Solutions. So in this video, we're going to be talking about basic drainage terminology that you, the homeowner, should know if you're going to be having estimates done to fix a water issue on your property, or if you're just a DIYer looking to expand your knowledge with drainage because you're trying to fix the problem yourself. So we're going to be talking about this a little bit in depth. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to be talking about is the difference between a main line and a lateral line. Now, you might also hear this called a trunk line and a branch line. So basically, the trunk line or main line is going to be the primary pipe that discharges the entire system. In this mock setup that I have going on here, we have a 6 by 6 by 4 inch Y connection, and this right here would be your main line or trunk line. Now, your lateral line that comes into the main line would be this 4-inch PVC pipe right here, also known as a branch line that enters the trunk line. So those terms are interchangeable, but they mean the same thing. So the main line is the trunk line, the lateral line is the branch line. But we can get a little bit trickier with this if we start adding laterals to your lateral line that enters the main line. So let's go ahead and let's show that next. All right, so in this new setup that we have here, we have now turned this lateral line into what we would call a main lateral. The reason why it is now a main lateral line is because we have this additional lateral line that connects into it. So now we have two lateral lines. So this one becomes the main lateral, and then the main lateral enters into your trunk line or your main line. So where this would be as an example out in the field, so let's say we're running downspout drains. We have multiple downspout drains around a house that we're collecting, and we're feeding them to a 6-inch main because the volume of water is so heavy with all of those downspouts. Plus maybe we're running some catch basins in line with this 6-inch main to collect surface water. So the volume of water, once it hits this 6-inch, is going to be very intense. It's going to be a lot of water. This would come into play if we have, let's say, two downspouts that we're running, and those two downspouts are going to give off a certain amount of water that a 4-inch line can handle. So a 4-inch line can handle those two downspouts. We would just keep them on a 4-inch line before we enter our 6-inch main, because once we enter the 6-inch main, we have water that we're collecting upstream from other downspouts and catch basins, and then downstream we're collecting more downspouts and or catch basins. So this is where that would come into play out in the field, having a lateral line go into a main lateral into your main line. So the next common terms that I'm going to talk about are pretty basic. So this would be your bell end right here. On 10-foot sections of pipe or 20-foot sections of pipe, you're going to have a bell end, and you're going to have what's called a spigot end. The other side would be the spigot end. This side would be the bell end. Where it bevels out, this is where the other piece of pipe would slide in, and the spigot end is what would slide into that pipe. Now, the other term is going to be a hub. A hub is typically on a fitting. So this is the hub of the fitting. So this is where the actual pipe slides in. And in this case, I'm going to use some triple wall HDPE pipe because they fit into sewer and drain fittings, just to show you. But that would be the hub of the fitting. So those are some pretty common and basic terms, but I feel like we need to just cover those for this video. All right, so the next terms we're going to cover is going to be a couple of different ones, and I'm going to do them all at the same time pretty much. So what we have going on here in this setup is what we would call an inline basin or an inline catch basin. We have a 6-inch main line coming in on one side, and then we have a 6-inch main line exiting. So this would act as an inlet. That's another term we're going to cover here. The inlet is the drain basin itself, because water that's traveling across the surface is going to fall down through the grate and into the system. It's going to take it in, and then it's going to discharge it. So this is what we would call an inlet. Any type of drain basin, storm drain, catch, anything that catches water would be called an inlet. So the other thing that this can be used for, that we actually like doing a lot, is a distribution box. So a distribution box in a storm system would be any box that has multiple inlets coming in at different angles, different elevations, and then it has a main line as well to be able to discharge that system. So a distribution box basically allows that water to converge and then exit out the main line. There's obviously another inlet hole right here for another lateral line to enter in. That's where the term lateral would also come into play. This would be your main line coming through here, and this would be your lateral line that's dumping into your distribution box. Distribution boxes are very handy to use because not only can they act as an additional catch and an inlet to be able to catch additional water, but they can also act as a clean out point or a maintenance point. Because you can have access to multiple main lines and multiple lateral lines, that serves very well in the future if any of them need to be accessed, because then you have a place that you can easily open up and either feed a camera in multiple directions, a sewer snake, a jetter, whatever you might need to do. You have a clean out point for all of them. And that's another term that we could go ahead and cover right now really quick, is a clean out. So a clean out is basically any point in the system that you can open and access. And that would just go in like that and twist down. This one happens to be spray painted black on the top, so you understand the idea. So that would be an access point in a lateral line or a main line, depending on how the configuration is made and put together. So another way that clean outs can sometimes be used, and we have seen this a lot in Florida, is sometimes just a simple cap like this ends up getting put on top and they don't glue it together. They just push it, they push fit it in place, and that's it. So if you need to access the system, you have to pull this cap off instead of unscrew it. So that's another clean out access point. All right, so keep in mind that clean outs like this are commonly used in sanitary systems as well, not just storm systems. So another thing that I wanted to talk about real quick, you never want to mix storm water with your sanitary water and vice versa. You never want to mix the gray water from a sanitary system in with the storm water. The reason for this is because obviously you do not want contaminants and pollutants, chemicals, human waste entering into a storm sewer, because that's ultimately going to lead to creeks, rivers, and natural areas. And the reason you don't want storm water going into your sanitary system is because the sanitary systems, they lead to wastewater treatment plants. And wastewater treatment plants can only handle so much water. So if a bunch of storm water from a storm is going in to the sanitary system, that wastewater treatment plant cannot keep up with that, and it's going to overwhelm the plant. So you want to always make sure that those two storm systems are kept separate. All right, so one of the last terms I'm going to cover is a combo. So basically a combo or a combination fitting is whenever you have a Y and you need to turn that Y, and you could either use a 22.5-degree fitting, or you could use a 45-degree fitting to pick up your lateral line and enter it into the main. So that's the last term that I'm going to be covering in this video, is a combo fitting. And we actually have a video talking about using a Y, and we go over that a little bit more in depth and why to use a Y. I'll link that in the description below in case you're interested in watching that video. All right, guys. Well, I think that just about does it for this video about drainage terminology. I hope you gained a little bit of knowledge from watching it. If you did, give us a thumbs up. It really supports us. It supports the channel. It helps out what we do. And until next time, this is Stormwater Drainage Solutions signing out.